Good morning to all, or as my Texas pal Rusty James would say, all y'all. I'm Don McMahan. I'm going to be the maestro for the program today. And our goal is to have all of you walk away and feel like you had something of value. And we're very keen on that. This is, you have a lot of webinars you do, but the idea is really give you something that you can do something with. Here's how we plan to run this today. First, we're going to do short, so you'll all have a chance to answer a few questions. We'll share the results. And right after that, we'll go to Q&A, which will be live. As we move through the prezos, feel free to type in your questions in chat. And at the end, when we get to the Q&A, then we'll have those teed up, but we're only going to address those in the live session. So again, thanks for participating. I'm Don McMahan, president of FlyCloud Consulting, and I also call myself a fractional VP of Sales. I'm known as a sales mechanic around the Bay Area because I fix broken sales organizations, and sometimes I build new ones. I've managed sales teams for way many years, over 30 years, cross-country, mostly in technology. I've been a VP of sales for much of that time. Today, I help companies generally 10 million and up, although smaller companies with high margins are also interesting engagements. So happy to talk to anyone. Doesn't matter what kind of business you're in, high tech, low tech, or no tech, as long as you have a product that can and should be sold. And I've run into a few that don't meet that criteria, so I try to stay away from those. But the issues are the same. And when I joined my national group, Sales Acceleration, 5 years ago, I didn't really believe that you could cut across so many industries and it was all the same. But after successfully engaging myself in things like daylight fluorescent paint pigments to $500,000 semiconductor equipment, absolutely true. All the issues are the same. They can be fixed with the right process and the right people. So that's absolutely true. The other part about what I do, I'm not a typical consultant, and you know, that's where they come in and tell you your baby's ugly, then they leave. I actually I do stuff, and I roll up my sleeves. I build the comp plans. I fill in the spreadsheets. I hire, interview people, and all of that stuff. So very, very much operational, and it's really a lot of fun to be engaged that way. I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Rolf.
Hello, my name is Rolf Neweiler of A to Z. I'm honored to be here, and thank you for taking time out of your busy days to join us. I provide chief consulting officers services to nonprofits, family offices, and small to medium-sized businesses. My goal is to be a trusted financial advisor on an affordable basis, providing accounting, finance, and administrative management service so my clients can focus their attention on their customers and their businesses. I create financial and goal clarity while training your accounting staff and running your back office. I specialize in working on location with your teams, within your organization's culture, and I do anything from short-term cleanup projects to longer-term fractional CFO services. Thanks again. Franka?
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Franka Winchester, co-founder and partner of Pacific Crest Group. We are a boutique consulting firm here in the Bay Area, and we offer outsourced HR services to privately held organizations. And our purpose is to help business owners maneuver the challenges they're facing with people, with culture, with risk management. And like Don and Rolf, we roll up our sleeves with our clients and we plan ahead with strategy, we implement systems, we mitigate risk, and we provide a sounding board and best practices recommendations for our clients. I invited Katrina to join me here, who is in the trenches and may be able to answer some of your trickier questions for us later today.
Well, I wish I had someone to answer my tricky questions, but I don't. So as one of my favorite talking heads says, let's get after it. Obviously, in 10 minutes, we can only do so much today, and it's a very large subject, but we're going to give you the highlights in the 10 minutes, and of course, there will be the follow-up. So we're going to launch. Okay, so, and again, we're going through sales management, financial strategy, and human resources last, and then followed by Q&A. We're going to talk about sales management. In this is chaos, there's also opportunity. you got to be looking. The other thing, interesting survey, and I have the paper if you guys want, the whole McKinsey report, the global report about the impact of COVID. They get in, of course, they talk about the business. They also happen to talk about the, the health issues around that. But the new normal, it's going to look nothing like we've seen, and that's kind of a key thing to remember today. It won't be 2019 ever again. We're going to talk about big issues. What's urgent? It's all about adapting, issues affecting your company. You have a strategy, overall company strategy for the next 6 months, personnel strategy for sales, budgetary constraints for both sales and marketing, and IT support for a remote workforce. Here's the one of the McKinsey charts, and they talk about the progression here, resolve and resilience. Rolf talks about cash management, return, and reimagination and reform. So the companies that understand how to evolve and change will be the winners in this situation. One of the key questions, and really a very common theme amongst all of the meetings and professionals I've met with, the team you have that was successful in the old world may not be the team that you need going forward. You're going to have some people who are, I'm talking about sales. It will be other positions as well, but anyone who is customer facing, not everyone is as effective using tools like Zoom. They're traditional, face-to-face, and you're going to have to make some choices. And this, when I talk about triage in this business climate and with the reduced revenues you have, and I think you all know this, you don't have a lot of time to make bad choices. You got to quickly figure out who can play and who cannot. And then one of the things that I like, if you can repurpose, maybe those people could be successful in a different role in the company. You'll probably have some new roles. You may have your Zoom expert support person. And for example, most meetings, group meetings that I've been in, ideally you have someone that just manages that. It's not the presenter. In our case, our budget didn't allow, so I'm both of those roles. But if you can repurpose, you will. But one of the things I've learned over the years, and is a significant learning for me as a VP of Sales, you can't train your way out of some of these things. I used to believe I could take C players and move them up to A, and only after failing and empirically proving to myself that although I thought I was the greatest young sales manager in the world, it didn't work. When I changed my strategy and I started hiring B players only, I can take them up to an A player. Things changed dramatically, and I've had a much more successful hiring history after making that change. I didn't give it up easily because who wants to admit that that you can't do it? But you won't train your way out of this with those people. You're going to have to assess. We at Sales Acceleration and FlyCloud, we have a number of tools we use. Some tools I built myself, some tools that we have. Wiley & Company, for example, they've been providing research for these kind of things for 200 years. And I like the assessment tools. It's something we didn't have back in the day, but you've got to figure out quickly who the winners are going to be. Sales compensation, one of my favorite subjects. If I wanted to fix one thing in any company and get the most results, it's sales compensation. And I've done this often. I'm really good at sales compensation. Not everybody likes to do it. Typically in a company, HR doesn't know what to do with it, and my help is often welcome. But right now, sales competition is a strategic issue for you. Obviously, if your revenue, and we look at that, if the revenues are significantly off, if your team is gold, and a typical comp plan would be 50% of their income is variable based on commission, and now you're 30–40% off of normal revenue. If you don't fix the compensation plan to address that, you're going to see people leaving. And guess who leaves? The best people leave. And I'm seeing it. A young salesperson I talked to this week, his high-tech company, but they did not do that. They've already lost several salespeople. It's going to be very, very hard to find replacements and A players. Going to be a lot of movement that's going on. The other thing, if they don't leave, sometimes it's better if they do. morale goes down. And once somebody starts talking and they're unhappy with management, it just infects the whole group, like COVID-19 in a nursing home, and it's a death spiral. So the key to the sales compensation issue, and I have a program called Crisis Sales Comp. You've got to make adjustments and make them quickly. At the same time, don't be stupid. There's some companies who say, well, we'll reduce quotas. Okay, that kind of solves it. There are more creative and strategic ways that you can rebuild that compensation and get more out of it. So, but it's got to be top of the list because people are absolutely moving around right now. And as the economy heats up, that's going to accelerate. Budget constraints. Obviously, with less revenue, you're going to have to look very hard, and Rolf will talk about budgeting, especially in sales and marketing budgets. I know the marketing folks are always happy to hear this, but I've always embraced marketing. If you don't have a great marketing program, it makes sales really difficult. But in this environment, things are going to change. We're going to have a shift where some of the budget that was perhaps a sales budget is going to end up with marketing. It becomes more important, especially as you're building your messaging and your branding for these remote meetings. Sales headcount, you're going to decide how many outside and how many inside. We will have outside salespeople. I know salespeople now still doing face-to-face calls in different parts of the country. Marketing investments, and this also seems to be a common theme. It's time to market. Everyone seems to be in agreement on this, is that the winners in this market are going to be predatory. They are going to take some of the weaker companies out of it. So you've got to make a decision. It's not a time to cut your marketing budget. Do you want to be a winner? The winners are going to get the talent, and the winners are going to get the business. So you're really going to have to decide who you want to be. And it goes back to the original slide. That's all about, are you planning for a post-COVID world? And if you're not, you're likely to be bait for the big predators that are going to get bigger and bigger. So the planning for various scenarios is something really important. We have a sales acceleration engagement, and we call it a sales recovery plan, where we do 2 weeks of workshops and model various outcomes. You build contingency plans for each one of those, and whichever one shows up, you pull that one off the shelf. And very much like the military does, and doing war games with various scenarios. If you've ever read Tom Clancy, there's a lot of detail that goes into that. So the planning is important. The other thing, real world testing, you can't wait for your plan to be perfect. Launch it, see how it goes. If it's not the right plan, relaunch something else. And remember the old Latin proverb, we don't hear the fortis fortuna adiuvat, but fortune favors the bold. I think that's very, very much true in this market. Talk about IT infrastructure. All of these guys just got a promotion. How important is it that Zoom works, that the security works, and everything plays as you expect it to? And companies are having to scale up. You have the bandwidth and your internet plans. Does everyone have the tools? Do they have the sound and lighting, everything you need? So that tech support is very much logistics. And you read any history book about war, one of my favorite subjects is really logistics are the guys that really win the battles. Some interesting quotes, Patton or Eisenhower was, gives them credit. I like Alexander the Great. If the campaign fails, they're the first ones I will slay. Well, I don't think we have anybody going that far, but know that IT infrastructure and support is important. And also note in the outsource model in our network group in the Bay Area, if you don't have an IT staff, I know a number of companies that provide great outsourced IT, and they're a great way to go, especially if you've got certain surge things. Talk to me about that. I'd be happy to refer you to some of those partners. We're going to move into Rolf and financial strategy again. I wish I could spend an hour talking about the sales side, but we'll be talking later. Rolf, take it away.
Great presentation, Don. Thank you. First, I'd like to start with a thought. To survive any crisis or to thrive in a new business environment, those who adapt fast win. So on the financial side, to win, what you need to do immediately is update your budget and your business plans to meet your new challenges. Your pre-COVID-19 budgets and plans are probably out of date, if not obsolete. You will need to try out your business to understand your cash flows and survive current crisis. If you don't have cash, you're probably going to have a very difficult time or an impossible time. So you need to determine and focus back on the core basics. You're one slide ahead, Don. Can you go back one?
Oh, I'm sorry, Rolf.
You have to go back to your core businesses and find out, what's working for you, what works well, what works in this environment, and possibly add new business lines or shed them. So for some, instances that we've seen in the paper is, like Tesla, they're starting to make PPP equipment as well as their cars, or perhaps even scaling the cars back while they do these new business lines. So related to the budgets and business plans are also your accounting. Your accounting department is going to have to change. It's not going to be as important to get them absolutely accurate, but more important to get them timely. So, 30 days may not be fast enough to turn around, but that's something you're going to have to work out with your accountants and your business needs is how fast you need off information and what are the relevant key performance indicators as I help lay clients out. When you have to decide what to keep, what to discontinue, what to add in the new normal, what products and services and operations are you going to keep? What are those direct costs associated with them? Break out you're still way ahead, Don.
Okay, which slide do you want to be on?
The first one, sorry.
This one?
Yes, this one. I'll
okay. You say change and I'll move forward.
Yeah. So, also be specific about, what's directly related to this coronavirus crises versus what's going to be normal and the new normal going forward. So, for example, now you might have additional IT costs, you may have layoffs, you may have mandatory sick leave that you didn't have in the past. What kind of expenditures can be reduced or deferred? Do you need everything you've been paying for? So overall, as I said before, cash flow is paramount. Look at all your sources of cash. Have you gotten government loans? If so, are you staying in compliance with them so you get the most forgivable if possible? What's your banking relationship with? Can you get additional funding? Do you have lines of credits already available? Is it time to go out and get some more capital and get some investors in your entity and companies? And one thought that, I'd like to put out there just for people to think is, some people are planning to exit their business probably in a year, 2 years. Perhaps now's the time to bail out, get what you can, and, not go through a 3 to 5 year recovery. So I know on an individual basis, I have personal friends that are thinking about early retirement. So like a lot of disasters and economic depressions, this will pass too, even though it's going to be difficult. So with a good business plan and good budgeting and clean financials being relevant and timely, I think those are all critical to helping you get through this economic upheaval. A long thought out plan will go a long way to navigate through these unusual times. Next slide, please. So it's time to assess your company's financial health. So the best way to do that is review your balance sheet and income statement closely. Revenue is always important. Don did a great presentation on that, but from my point of view, what are your new revenue lines? What's going to continue? What's going to go away? Also, employee costs. I'm going to defer to Franka and her presentations, but for most companies, that is the major expense, not all their expenses. So those two need to be gone through very thoroughly and devised in not only getting through the current crisis, but how do you, have different scenarios of how this is going to come out of it and what your new normal might look like. For example, other expenses, do you need all your services? Can you cancel some? Do you have subscription services you don't need anymore? Or supplies? Review your insurance policies. Do you have business interruption insurance? Can it apply? I mean, I've heard the companies getting a lot of pushback on what definition of business interruption. And lastly, taxes. The government has been very generous in delaying tax deadlines until July 15th, but that doesn't mean they're forgiven. That means forbearance, which means you're going to have double or triple your tax bills in coming months. So make sure you plan for those when they come due. Next slide, please. So the balance sheet. It's a great time to go through and review all your balance sheet accounts with your accountants and tax accountant. We already discussed cash. How much do you have? What's your projected cash balances? Will you run out of cash? Maintaining a cash flow is going to be critical. Prioritize on all the cash you can collect immediately. Accounts receivable. Your customers, how are they doing? Are they ones that paid regularly now not open for business? And will they pay? Will they pay at all? When will they pay? Prior towards your customers, you can collect from as soon as and follow through. Fixed assets, investments, and other. I mean, did you have large equipment purchases that you're going to perhaps be able to delay or you don't need? Can they be canceled? Is there equipment that's no longer relevant in your business, and can you sell those to generate additional cash? Long term or the near future, with the home and office, work at home, stay at home, a lot of employees are going to probably prefer that, and it can save you a lot of money. It'd be a new business cost to reimburse them for home office costs, but you'll probably save money not renting space for them in expensive office space. Accounts payable and other liabilities. Call your vendors, call your banker, let them know what's going on. Are you going to make all your loan covenants? Are you going to make your payments? Can you start negotiating terms? Because to preserve cash, you want to bring it in as fast as you can and let it go out as slowly as possible to extend your lifeline through this crisis. This is, once again, is a good time to clean up your balance sheet. Talk to your accountants, talk to your tax accountant, review all the things that you think are of value. Are they continue to be of value, or do you need to write them off? You need to review your accounting expenses. It should reflect the current situation so you know exactly where you stand. Next slide, please. So the next slide is all about communication. So, talk to your accountants, talk to your tax accountants, see how you can speed up your accounting processes to get timely and relevant information. It doesn't need to be exact. That's what you can do at year end when you need to do your tax reporting or other public reporting. But, some businesses I've worked with in the past, their financial statements are 3, 6, 9 months late. That's going to be way too late in a crisis like this. And be prepared to negotiate. Your customers are going to negotiate with you. You need to negotiate with your others. Building strong relationships with suppliers, customers, your employees will go a long way to finding the resources and the help that everybody can survive this crisis together. And with that, I'd like to hand it off to Franka.
Thank you. Thanks, Don and Rolf, both for all of your information and best practices for the sales and finance functions. I will not talk about what to look out for in relations to HR and your people. The COVID-19 pandemic, it's a human predicament, and it goes right to the core of every individual on this planet. It challenges us to handle fears and emotions that no other financial or political turmoil comes close to. I did pick out this quote. I like what this says: the most dangerous, damaging, infectious disease is hysteria. And so what we're trying to do is to make sure that we have a compassionate human response to a crisis that's happening, so that we do all the while maintaining a safety of the public. That's what we have done time and again. So I kind of found that quote and thought it was very relevant to what we do. And I think we can already see in many of the responses of people how people react to each other, and how I think this environment has helped us to connect more with people. So next slide, please. So the initial phase of workforce planning is focused on potentially rehiring laid off staff or to fully bringing back partially furloughed employees. And if you applied or received the payroll protection program money, make sure you track your payroll and your eligible expenses properly to be able to make that portion of that loan forgiven. If you don't bring your employees back, you lose out on that opportunity. One key point to remember is that there's a salary limit of $100,000 for highly compensated employees. The second phase is right staffing for recovery and growth. How has your business shifted in the short term, and what talent do you need for the next vision of your growth? Do you have the right people in the right seat for the business moving forward? Future thinking and planning is crucial here, even with the many unknowns ahead of us. Currently, the unemployment labor pool is high. Lots of people are out of work and have the opportunity for a job change. Recruiting and hiring was challenging enough before COVID, and now employers need to adapt and leverage tools to conduct effective remote recruiting and hiring. This is important. Keep in mind that the majority of communication between humans is nonverbal. Body language gives cues. Use video calls to see candidates. It is the best second option to an in-person interview. Remote recruiting is different. What can you do as an organization to stand out and to attract new or to keep your current talent? Look into preparing new onboarding practices in your current virtual world. Look at your systems and see what you can improve. This is a good time to create a solid cloud-based onboarding process. We are aware that some of the regulations have relaxed. As an example, the I-9 form verifications. They don't have to be done in person anymore. Also keep in mind that proper classification of employees is still a very important piece. Know that what your risks are when hiring 1099 contractors, and keep in mind the new laws that went into effect on January 1st, 2020 on the AB5. And if necessary, terminations can be done remotely, but plan and prepare well. You need a strategy around company's property, documents, drives, and a plan to collect personal belongings. How will you deliver the final paycheck for a for-cause situation? We recommend the best practices to do the termination in the morning and then deliver the check through a courier later that day. Next slide, please. So what is your company culture now that working from home is the norm? What are you focusing on building a strong, motivated, and connected workforce? And how are you and your employees dealing with your emotions? There are many ways to practice gratitude, meditation, exercise, or other stress release methods to stay mentally healthy, positive, and focused. I suggest strong and frequent communication with your team is crucial at this time. Keep everyone informed of your plans, updates, and next steps. Figure out if daily calls or weekly happy hours are the best way for your team to feel connected to each other. How do you prepare for a health scare or a potential death of an employee or family member due to coronavirus? What process will you follow if that happens? Make sure you haven't communicated the emergency sick and family leave law specific to COVID-19 to your employees. And then check out the CDC website. It has many resources on this topic. And then once you're allowed to face back into working at your physical office location, what potential issues and new sanitary processes do you need to plan for? Each county has written orders for specifics in each industry. As an example, we had a client just going back to work this week in construction. They're allowed to start working again, but they have very strict guidelines to follow, such as daily questionnaires that each employee has to fill out before starting on their job site. Next slide, please. What has changed in relations to employee management? So as of April 1st, be aware that you have the responsibility as an employer to offer a policy for emergency paid sick and family leave. It gives up to 80 hours of sick pay and an additional 10 weeks at 2/3 of the regular pay to employees who either can't work or telework due to coronavirus or don't have a childcare available because schools and childcare centers are closed. If you run into a situation with employees that are not productive or inappropriate, dealing with corrective action while working from home is an even more crucial and delicate step. It's really important. Document your conversations and create a plan for action for correction or possible termination. The exposure for employment action is greater now due to unknowns and interpretations. Make sure you are confident of the plan and steps of the termination before you take action. And I would say this is a very critical point in time to consult with your HR professional or lawyer before you do so. Now, if there's downtime from your regular business functions, this is a good time to focus on improving skills and training staff while working from home. This is a great way to build up your team for future growth of the organization. Look at your internal systems and processes and move forward with technology advances or products that may be new to your business. Career development of your team will keep the motivation and energy high. Find online resources and coursework that improve skills and knowledge that benefit the employee and ultimately your organization. Next slide, please. So when it comes to compensation, there are many different scenarios of pay. If you have furloughed or temporarily laid off employees, create a plan to communicate it clearly so your employees can more effectively plan their own financial situation. Show empathy and care and offer your help to them to manage their financial situation during this crisis. What are you doing to monitor and track the hours worked for your remote employees? Pay close attention to wage and hour compliance laws during COVID-19. As an example, you would be still responsible for paying overtime for any hourly employees. And if you have received the Payroll Protection Program funds, make sure that you follow the guidelines and track expenses carefully for maximum forgiveness. It's important to work with your payroll company to track this properly and keep reports and the documents ready to submit for your SBA lender. One area that's confusing and keeps coming up is the understanding of the PPP program that's completely separate from the tax credit you get from the emergency paid sick and family leave. Sure, we'll get a couple questions around that. Next slide, please.
I think we're actually 2 slides behind.
The next slide is about compliance and policies. I'll just keep talking. Look at your policies and create new ones. A business goes back to the office. As business goes back to the office, new orders around social distancing, protection, and hygiene and testing will play a big role in being compliant and protecting your employees. Don't forget about the new postal requirements for the CARES Act of April 2020. And then also look at your current handbook policies on remote work policies, commuting benefits, time tracking, company's property at home, and also workplace sanitation. So as your business goes back to work, it will not go back the way it was for a long time. I just wanted to say thank you for listening. And now that we've completed our presentations, we're ready to go right into the Q&A. And I would pass the baton back to Don for facilitation.
So based on running a little behind schedule today, we're gonna run this till 11:15 to give everyone who can stay a full half hour of Q&A. So let's go. Let's see. Ready for questions? Oh, I see Carter Welsh. Carter, you are allowed to talk.
Typed it in the chat, but what are the biggest mistakes that Franka, in particular, you're seeing clients making in HR?
Well, as an example, what came up this week is that if people don't rehire their employees once they receive the PPP money, then they will not get that portion forgiven. So if you really want to grow and keep your employees, that would be a big mistake to make.
Okay.
Katrina, do you have any other mistakes you want to talk about? you see a lot out there what's going on.
Yeah, the other one that I would just comment on is about decisions in making terminations, separations with employees. We're in uncharted territory with regards to how compliance plays out, especially around people who are taking emergency sick or family leave, and how you're responding to those circumstances. So somebody may not be as productive as you would like them to be right now because of their, having young children at home that they're trying to homeschool as well as do their job. It's a cautionary tale to be careful with regards to your risk management around terminations.
I'm watching for those raised hands. I can't believe we could not have covered everything. Where's the Q&A? Let's see. Well, this is anonymous. I'm not muted. You guys can hear me, right? Here's a question. Who ultimately decides what PPP expenses are counted towards forgivable expenses? For example, we have union dues. We're unsure if this could be paid with PPP money. How do we get this point answered? I think that'd be either Rolf or Franka.
This changes almost daily. Last week, the SBA came up with another set of rules of addressing what happens when your employees refuse to come back to work. So, but in those SBA guidelines that have been issued so far, it's pretty tightly knit around the thought that and the whole mission that was set up was payroll, rent, utilities. Union dues is something I'd have to research. I don't have a client that has come up with that. But it's probably, I'm not going to guess because it is payroll related. It's a great question and something I'd be happy to follow up with you on. Have you seen this, Franka?
Nope, we also don't have any clients that have union dues, but I did read up, I think that correctly, it's payroll, utilities, rent, and mortgage payments, and it has to be 75% towards payroll, 25% towards the rest of that, of the whole piece of the forgiven part.
Yeah,
It does cover benefits.
right.
Yeah, benefits.
Absolutely. So it does cover benefits, and the other thing, it also covers the payroll taxes and fees.
But it doesn't cover the federal payroll taxes, so you have to be careful of that.
You CFO's always got to, spoil it for me.
State and local taxes, but not federal. So there is a situation where you could have employees not working, you're paying them payroll, and you're going to be out your federal payroll taxes.
Looking for questions. Can't believe everybody is so shy. Until I see another raised hand, how about the panelists? Anything you didn't have time for? Anything else next important you'd like to mention to the audience today? Rolf?
Just really highlight, I've gotten a lot of questions on how do you do the accounting for the forgivable PPPL loan expenses. And some clients I'm recommending you actually set up a separate bank account and you just take those monies out of that bank account. If you're a small entity, that might work and may have a little discipline there. Otherwise, make sure your accountants are tracking everything that can be allocated to that loan. So when the time comes in 2 months, we can substantiate that loan forgiveness. And pay attention to your ratios too. The 75% is a very specific ratio. So if you aren't staffing up or paying your employees at your old level, you will be penalized for having less than 75%.
Franka, anything you would have liked to included and didn't?
Let me ask you a question first. I'll think about it. There's a question came in from Carter. What's the biggest sales management mistakes that companies are making? So Don, that goes to you.
I think right now the biggest one that I've seen is their failure to understand that they need to change the comp plans. And again, you don't have a lot of time. Unhappy salespeople have a lot of options. They're very mobile and they'll walk. And go back to HR, it's very expensive to recruit. You lose a salesperson, you've lost productivity, and you've got the time it takes, time, energy, and expense of recruiting. You may have to pay a recruiter. If you need to recruit, talk to me. We have a special flat rate recruiting program for sales and marketing professionals that's hard to beat. About less than half of what typical recruiters use. But you got to go through all that. And based on average with clients I have today, it may take you 3 months. So think about 3 months of, man down, right? It's very tough. And I'm surprised how many people don't really understand that. And it's really, it's a big deal. So I'm going to ask, we've got some other, I've got one of my fellow Essex advisors, and I'm going to pick on him, Rock Robinson out of Columbus, Ohio. Rock, I'd like, if you don't mind, I think I've unmuted you. I'd like you maybe give us a little view of what's going on in a different part of the country.
Yeah, well, great. Thanks, Don. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Yeah, I actually was trying to get a question in for Franka and Katrina, too. I was just curious from their end, too, with the different states, with the governors dictating a lot of the different rules and regs. I live in an area where we've got like multiple states, so it's just compelling to keep up with everything that's different, just among Ohio and Indiana and Kentucky and Michigan as an example. That how do you just keep track of and stay up on top of everything that's going on with multiple states?
So for my clients that are, it's not just multiple states, but we also have local ordinances that have variations. So even right here in the Bay Area, and then in other states as well, each of the different counties may have, and even some cities have their own local ordinance as well. So here in California, we're a little bit used to having to juggle a lot of that. So it's simply subscribing to the county updates, checking those websites for updates, relying on the clear directive from authorities. So making sure you're checking the SBA site as well as checking the IRS site, and then each of the local ordinances that may have something that comes out. I also push, I encourage my clients to keep their ear to the ground if they hear something, to alert me as soon as possible so that I can research it. And there's a lot of misinformation that's out there as well. And then there's also existing articles and information that has become out of date. Rolf mentioned that the SBA just issued some more directives or clarifying some things just last week that made prior information obsolete. For example, the Franka mentioned in her presentation that $100,000 cap with regards to salary for PPP forgiveness. There was clarification that was provided last week from the SBA saying that is only for cash compensation. It doesn't include the forgiveness that you can get for that particular employee's other expenses around their benefits or employer contributions to retirement plans and the like.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm going to talk about late breaking news. Sales Acceleration, our national company, just did a survey across various company sizes. I didn't get this in time to include in the presentation, but it's great data. Gives everybody a little snapshot. You guys can all see this infographic, hopefully?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. So biggest challenges companies are faced with: loss of revenue, no pipeline. Sales managers understand that. Employee safety, lack of travel face time, supply issues. One of the big agreements out in the community is that supply supply chain management has now become strategic. We just discovered that all of our drug supplies are made in China. That's not a happy surprise. The same issues go to companies with other kinds of products. And then the essential businesses, the ones that are deemed essential. I mean, you're not the tanning salon. They're having a hard time keeping up. They've got staff out. They've got higher volume, and so they're having trouble. And then the last part, need a reentry strategy when we come out of the pandemic. Here's a survey who took it, CEOs and presidents. And I'm going to find the other infographic goes with this. Stop share. Why don't you guys, while I find there's another slide, while you guys add anything else that you might want to add?
There's a question for Rolf. What is the market viability for selling if a business owner wants to sell?
I really have no idea at this time. It's changing times, but it's just something that I have had some conversations with small business owners that it's something to think about and put on the plate. I think it depends. How good was your business? What's the value of it? And what's it worth to you to either get additional capital, get some help, or get out? But that's not, I'm not really an expert in the M&A market. But I have had, for example, I had one client, more of a friend client, and they run a exercise studio and they're just calling it quits. So you want some fitness equipment, I got a contact for you.
I found the rest of the infographic I was looking for. Here's what came out of the survey. Companies were asked about impact of sales, 93% yes, only 6% no. And most of those, the no ones, are providing essential business services or products. It hasn't affected Amazon, has it? Almost half companies plan to lay off or furlough all or part of their sales team. Well, you're a salesperson, you hate to hear that. Again, those are the weaker companies. The big ones are going to be picking them up. And so 37% yes and no. Over half do not have a plan ahead sales strategy. That's what we're talking about. Do you have a plan? If you don't have a plan, life's going to be hard. So 45% have a plan, only 3% working on it, and 37%. But there's almost 14% of the people surveyed don't have any plans to have a plan. So, and I think that's going to prove tragic for some of those companies. I think, what, this is what, me worry? And it was interesting. We already looked at this. Well, if we don't, let's see, we have any other questions coming in. I'm going to stop sharing this. Check the Q&A.
I'll give just a couple of more quick comments. Franka touched on briefly some of the things to consider when phasing back in. There are a number of different policies that I'm reviewing with clients to try and figure out what it would look like specifically at their organization when you start to actually physically reopen your business. If you have employees that are teleworking or that you're planning to bring back from furlough and layoff in order to capitalize on the PPP funds. A couple of them to think about are workplace sanitation. So how are you going to do that? Maybe set up a rotation schedule with employees. You should put in place a personal hygiene policy. Some businesses already have that in place just by the nature of their business, but it's something that will be critical for all businesses to have in place, a policy that has consequences attached to it if people are not following proper hand washing and other personal hygiene protocols that are critical now when we start to go back and being in physical presence with one another again. Another one is the social distancing requirements. What are you going to do about meeting rooms? You're going to close off those large conference rooms, no more, no large group gatherings for probably a period of time. Franka touched on the health screening and logs. And again, this is dependent on your business and if there are any local orders around it specific to your industry and business.
I'm sorry, we're going to wrap it up because we're three minutes after. Sorry, Katrina, but I have godlike powers with the mouse today. I want to thank everyone again for joining us. Also, I want to remind you, we have I have the next webinar in this series coming up on the 21st at 10 a.m. You can send me a note if you're interested. That will be a sales and marketing focused event with actually a subspecialty in there with one of my network partners who does animation, really amazing stuff. So if you're interested in more specifics about sales and marketing, join us on the 21st. Thanks again to everybody for joining. Again, shoot us an email if you'd like a copy of the presentation, or any of us if you have questions. I think Franka was willing, if you need a little bit of advice time, give her an email. And Rolf, how about you want to donate any after meeting time?
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody wants to have questions, follow-up questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I'm happy as well to take a call with anybody, talk about maybe your single biggest sales issue that's bothering you. Anyway, join us on the 21st. Thanks again, everybody. Have a great day. Have a safe day. Wash your hands often. Thanks again.